Hey, you bastards! That's overly aggressive. What's up, assholes? It's time to... Why are you being so mean to them? What have they ever done but love you? Or was that their crime? Hello. It's time for another Star Trek video. And it's not going to be one of the ones where I've gone through the trouble of forming a thesis and scripting it and really trying hard to make it good. It's what we like to call here in the business, in the YouTube business, low-effort content. And I would say it's because of the holidays, but if you watch me regularly, you know that I do this shit all the time. It's not Trek Actually. It's not actually Trek Actually, and it's even lower down the creativity ladder than that, because it is a not actually Trek Actually comment response video where you, my wonderful viewers, who I would never address in an unduly aggressive tone, no matter what you may have heard or seen in shots that I intentionally included at the beginning of this video for a gag. You have done the work for me by leaving insightful comments on my previous videos, to which I will now respond. So let's do the first one. Just go to the first one. This first batch of comments is from my most recent Trek Actually video, which was on the topic of whether or not Captain Cisco is a war criminal. This first one comes from Steve Lovelace, who says, I always assumed that Garak used the biomimetic gel to blow up Vreenak's ship. I have to say, a lot of people expressed a similar opinion in the comments of that video. In all honesty, all the years I've been a fan of DS9, all the times I've seen that video, or I've seen that episode more times than I can count, that never occurred to me. And now that it has occurred to me, thanks to comments like this one from Steve and other viewers who said the same thing, I think that's probably it. Like, I feel like that is now how I read that episode. That Garak was always trying to get that biomimetic gel for himself, and he then used it to fashion an explosive which he used to blow up Vreenak's shuttle. Because there is a line of dialogue earlier in that episode, I think it's during that scene when Bashir and Cisco are talking, and Cisco is telling him, get me some biomimetic gel, and Bashir is like, I don't think so. One of the concerns that Bashir expresses is that biomimetic gel can be used to make organic explosives. And I do not think that is a random line that the writers just threw in there to put some words in Bashir's mouth. I think that has meaning, and I think the meaning is that that's what Garak did. So I never noticed that before. I never picked up on it, but now I think that's how it's intended to be read. So thank you, Steve Lovelace, and everybody else in the comment section of that video who pointed that out, because that's totally up here now. Absolutely. It's awesome. All the times I've seen that episode, and that never occurred to me. This next one is from Jack Leonard, who says, I don't know how many times I've watched In the Pale Moonlight, but I never noticed the foreshadowing with the replicated Romulan ale. Well, first of all, don't feel bad, because I just got done talking about how I noticed something for the first time after someone pointed it out in a comment that I had completely missed before. And I did not pick up on the replicated Romulan ale thing either until I think maybe a year ago, 2 years ago at the utmost. I was watching the episode again, and I picked up on that. I was like, oh, hey, wait a minute. That's like, that's thematically appropriate that he would be super skeptical of the replicated Romulan ale. He would be going on and on and on about how you can just tell how fake it is. It's super fake. Like, you drink it for a little while, and it starts to feel not fake, and then you're like, nope, it's fake. It's totally fake. Like, I didn't pick up on that as foreshadowing until relatively recently. And now that I picked up on it, just like with the, Garak probably used the biomimetic gel to make the explosive that blew up Vreenak's shuttle thing, now that I have picked up on it, it's super obvious, and I wonder how I ever missed it before. But that's one of the great things about having a piece of art that you can come back to over and over and over again, is that you can continually be discovering new things about it that you missed before. And once you discover the thing, you're like, how did I miss that? But it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, because it has enriched and deepened your appreciation of the thing that you were already a fan of. This one is from Sean Buffard. Jadzia even says she likes it when the bad guys win at the end of For the Uniform. Yes, and I had forgotten that line when I wrote the script for that video, but totally, I mentioned in my video how there is a lack of hand-wringing about Cisco poisoning the atmosphere of a planet in order to catch Eddington. But it goes beyond that. It's not just a lack of hand-wringing. Other than those reaction shots and Worf's initial reluctance to actually fire the torpedo that poisons the atmosphere, Cisco's actions are not merely tacitly condoned. Jadzia, who is his best friend, just openly says, that was awesome. What you did to catch Eddington when you poisoned the atmosphere of that planet and forced everybody who lived there to evacuate, that was awesome. Sometimes it's nice when the bad guy wins. Like, it's like, wow. There's not very much moral ambiguity about it at all. It's almost entirely portrayed as justified and good that Cisco did that. At least in the eyes of the heroes. I mean, we, of course, as the viewer, are free to make our own judgments, but in the eyes of Cisco's fellow crew members, of the other heroic members of the cast, once Worf gets over the whole, should we really be doing this? Like, he doesn't seem to voice too many objections, and Jadzia seems like she's ready to high-five him over it. Like, yeah, dude, you poisoned that planet and you caught that motherfucker. Yeah! Okay. Yep. And this one is from Dermomo Zero. My favorite part of In the Pale Moonlight was when Garak hijacked that school bus full of kids. Yeah, I love that scene too. I like when he's trying to lead them in the sing-along, and there's that one passenger in the very back of the bus that is not singing along, and Garak's up there trying to get them all to sing, and he's like, come on, sing, row, row, row your boat, sing, 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 why aren't you singing? And he's like yelling at the guy in the back, like, why aren't you singing? And the guy in the back stands up, and he goes, I was attempting to comprehend the meaning of the lyrics. Star Trek V is anybody. Here's one from Aaron Litz. The proper term is D20. Well, that's funny because I don't remember asking, nerd. Now shut up and let me finish my Star Trek comment response video on YouTube. These next few comments are actually from my previous comment response video. This first one is from Micah Torkelson. Quote, it's okay to just make it up as you go along, unquote. Me forming a thought bubble containing the X-Files and Lost, LOL. Yeah, I never watched Lost, so I can't speak to that, but fair play on the X-Files. What I said was, in my own defense, it's okay to make it up as you go along. Not that making it up as you go along always works or is always a good idea. I will say I think the X-Files did okay until about season 5 or 6, and then it started to get away from them in terms of the larger story arc, or the myth arc, as Chris Carter referred to it. I think if they had wrapped up the Alien storyline around season 5 or 6 and come up with something else for an ongoing storyline for the rest of the series, it would be remembered a lot better in that respect. I think what really was their downfall was attempting to carry that myth arc all the way across the entirety of that show's 9 seasons, and then doing that last episode where they attempted in vain, unsuccessfully, to convince us that actually, if you think about it, it all makes sense, when it had clearly been made up as they went along. And really, it didn't make a lot of sense taken as a whole. But they tried to make it seem like that anyway. That was a mistake. I think if they had tried to wrap things up earlier and then started over with a different ongoing storyline, it would be remembered a lot better than it is. And it's still remembered as a great show. It's one of my favorite shows ever. But that ongoing Alien storyline, I think, is the subject of a lot of very, very justified criticism. Here's one from Nika. Please disagree with my comment in your next comment response. Okay. Blake Runno, why is 300 put on the same level as Birth of a Nation? A couple people were wondering this in the comments. They were like, what's so bad about 300? Why does Steve hate 300 so much? The easiest thing for me would be to recommend that you go to LetMeListenPodcasts.com and get on the playlist for the Late Seating podcast and hunt down the episode of 300 where we actually review the movie, Jason and I go into detail about why I despise that movie and think it's bad, and not just a bad movie, but bad. But basically, it's violent, misogynist, racist, fascist propaganda. And I don't like any of those things. Those are all things I don't like. And why would I like a movie that's full of them? Is it as bad as Birth of a Nation in the sense that Birth of a Nation was basically intended to be a propaganda film for the Ku Klux Klan and was used as such and was actually used by the KKK to recruit people in the teens and 20s? It's not that bad, no. 300 is not that bad, and it has not, thank God, had as much of a negative impact on American popular culture or society as Birth of a Nation had. But 300 is racist, misogynist, fascist propaganda, and it's not a terribly good movie narratively, even if you ignore all of those things I just said. But I don't think you should ignore those things I just said. I think those things are there, and they count, and they are fair game for criticism, and I think they make it not just a bad movie, but a morally abhorrent movie. And that's why I don't like 300. Here's one from Big Bopper. The Burn. Why does it affect Romulan singularity drives? I'm sure that there are any number of explanations for that, but to me the best one is if you're wondering about the Romulans and why they can't go fast, la la la, just repeat to yourself, it's just a show. I should really just relax. It's probably something that the writers just forgot about. Here's one from Jeff Mathers. Yeah, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but the Borg used and assimilated Picard to cripple Starfleet at Wolf 359. If that's not an inside job, I don't know what is. What a great point. Again, this was a point that a couple people in the comments brought up, and it's something that I never thought about, and it only makes me appreciate that joke even more, because not only do we get that lower decks gag where there's the conspiracy theorist Starfleet officer and he's making fun of real-life conspiracy theorists and making fun of 9/11 truthers by saying, Wolf 359 was an inside job, but there's an extra layer to it where, depending on how you look at it, he's kind of right, because the Borg were using the knowledge of the assimilated Captain Picard to inform their attack, so it kind of was an inside job. So there's an extra level to it that I didn't consider until people pointed it out in those comments. So it makes me appreciate that joke even more than I already did. These next several comments are from my video about Star Trek, the original series' favorite trope of having Captain Kirk talk a computer to death. This first one is from Brian Kiger, who says, me screaming at the screen, what about Norman and I Mud? This was an oversight on my part. Tons of people in the comments of this video pointed out that I did not mention the androids in I Mud, that there's a really, really great scene in that episode of not just Kirk, but the rest of the crew, or Spock and McCoy teaming up and just intentionally acting illogical and acting weird to overload the circuits of the androids. And that was an oversight on my part. I decided when I conceived of that video that I wanted to focus mostly on the Ultimate Computer, with a little bit of Return of the Archons at the beginning, because that was the first instance of Kirk doing that. And I focused on those two episodes, and I mentioned other episodes. I think I also mentioned the Changeling, the Nomad episode. So that was sort of baked into the concept when I thought of it, and I just didn't remember to mention iMud, but I totally should have, because it's a great example of exactly what I'm talking about, of Kirk. And also people pointed out you could even use that as an example of Kirk teaching others to do it, because I said in my video, if Kirk didn't teach a class at Starfleet Academy on how to talk computers to death, it was a big oversight on Starfleet's part. And in the iMud episode, you see him kind of doing that. So it's definitely just an oversight on my part. And thank you to all of you for pointing that out. And my apologies for not at least even mentioning that episode in my video, because I can tell it was apparently really super upsetting for some of you, and I'm grieved by that. I am sincerely grieved by that. There's one from Stephanie Kohu. On the Ultimate Computer, you forgot to mention Captain Dunsel. Yes, I did. Another oversight that I should have worked into my episode summary. That is one of the little digs that is thrown at Kirk after the first War Games simulation, when the M5 does a good job and is able to defeat the other ship in the War Games simulation. The Commodore is like, I send our regards to Captain Dunsel. And that's really the Commodore giving Kirk the middle finger and referring to him as, because I think Spock or McCoy explains, somebody asks, and they explain that a Dunsel is it's just a way of saying a useless piece of equipment or redundant piece of equipment. And they're calling Captain Kirk a Dunsel, meaning he's no longer needed. And that's just a little kick in the teeth to Kirk from the Commodore. Very unprofessional, I think. Very unprofessional. But then again, knowing what we know about higher ranking officers in Starfleet from elsewhere in Star Trek, knowing how many evil admirals there are, it's not surprising that in addition to evil admirals, there are also asshole Commodores. Here's one from K. Brock 9146. Assassinating supercomputers was such a great trope for them, they decided to make the first movie all about that very issue. Yes, and yet we don't see Kirk attempting to short-circuit V'ger with logic. Can it be that he has learned, that he has grown, that he has discovered the folly of his ways? Or maybe he realizes that V'ger is just too sophisticated to fall for that. Or maybe he's looking around as the events of that movie start to unfold and he's thinking, this is a lot like when Nomad was here. Like a lot. When Ilea shows up as the probe and she is sort of V'ger in personification walking around, it's a lot like the Changeling. It's so much like when Nomad was there. And Kirk is like, okay, I bet I can't, it's not going to be that simple. I can't just do the same thing I did before and get us out of this. So he doesn't even try. That's why Kirk doesn't attempt to do that in Star Trek The Motion Picture, because he remembers the previous episode, which is one way in which Captain Kirk, the character, is very different from William Shatner, the actor, who I believe has never even watched Star Trek. This one is from David Mansfield. One thing that always bugged me about Star Trek is the away parties. The senior officers always go. In a real military, that would never, ever happen. Never, especially in a threat situation. That is a good point if we're looking at it in terms of realism, but when you are writing a piece of fiction, especially a piece of narrative adventure fiction, like Star Trek is, you have to find the balance between realism and what are the demands on you for creating compelling drama. And because Star Trek is centered on mostly the senior officers, or at least the bridge crew. The main characters of Star Trek are the bridge crew, and especially in classic Star Trek, the main characters are Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. So they need to be involved in the events of the episode. And if that means that they have to be on away missions all the time, even though logically it doesn't make sense to endanger the senior-most officers of the ship on these perilous missions, and in fact, it's counterintuitive, and in the real-life military, one of the benefits of attaining a higher rank as an officer is that you don't have to do as much dangerous shit. That all has to go out the window in order to serve the demands of the drama, in order to tell the best, most exciting, most gripping, most compelling story you possibly can. So you take the realism concerns and you set those aside and you say, yeah, realistically, in an actual military organization or quasi-military organization, the captain would not be going on the landing party, especially if it was judged to be a very dangerous situation where the captain's life would be imperiled. That would never actually happen. But for the purposes of our story, that is what's going to happen, because none of this is real. This is all made up, and there is a greater master to be served rather than realism, and that master is drama. Here's one from Nick Jeffrey, but Steve, the steam drill was my favorite character. I loved old Steamy. Steam drill was your favorite character. You wouldn't by any chance be the man who invented the steam drill, because the man who invented the steam drill, he thought it was mighty fine, but John Henry drove 15 feet and the steam drill only made 9, Lord, Lord. The steam drill only made 9. So shove that in your fucking ass! Here's one from John Catley. I guess now we know what happened to Control. Oh, please let this be a short trek at some point in the future. This would be the best short trek that I can think of right now have a short trek where control has been somehow sequestered, secluded in a data bank somewhere in Starfleet headquarters or on some asteroid somewhere, cut off from the rest of the computer network of the Federation, and it's no longer a direct threat to anybody, but there still are concerns about whether or not maybe it could break free and it could become a malevolent force again. And then in sneaks a young, cocky, let's say, Lieutenant James T. Kirk, who decides that this is the perfect opportunity to hone his burgeoning computer-killing skills, and he starts throwing some logic problems at control, and it sputters and blows a few circuits and some springs pop out, and that's it. Wouldn't that be like an awesome short trek? Oh, please. Mr. Kurtzman, I don't think you watch my channel, but you should, because I mostly like your shit. Mr. Kurtzman, please let me have that short trek I just described. You don't have to give me credit or nothing. I mean, it would be nice. It would be really awesome, actually, to have like a story by credit on a Star Trek production. I'm not asking for that. I'm not demanding it. No, I'm not. You can have it. I just want to see it. It's about the work. I just want to see the work. Because I think that would be awesome. Come on, Alex. Can I call you Alex? Have I overstepped the boundary? It's not going to happen now, is it? I was too familiar, and now it's not going to happen. I'm sorry. Everybody, I'm sorry. I fucked that up. That's on me. If that short trek never happens, it's on me. I apologize. And I especially apologize to you, John, because now it's never going to happen, and it's on me. And I have to live with that. And I did that joke already. I can't do that joke. I did that joke in the Cisco video. Fuck. This comment is from Jay Strand, who says, man, the king of cartoons was a total douche during his stint in tech development. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba-ba, that's right, you heard us correctly. He'll be right here directly to develop AI imperfectly. Dooby-dooby-dooby-doo-ah. Dr. Richard Daystrom. I couldn't think of a joke, so I just sang a song. And now these next several are from my video about whether or not Star Trek actually believes in the chain of command. And this one is from Kevin Thomas, who says, Trek is weird. It believes in an authority, but it also understands that too much belief in authority can lead to people believing that elections are invalid unless your side wins. Is that weird, or is that just reasonable? Because I like to think that I'm a fairly reasonable person. Granted, everybody is free to disagree with me when I express opinions on anything, particularly on matters of politics and government, but I don't happen to be an anarchist. I think it makes the most sense to have a government of some kind, to have a governmental authority in place in a society, but I also think that that authority needs to be accountable to the will of the people and to an established rule of law that is also subject to revision by the people. So it's not so much that authority is a bad thing. It's not a binary concept of either authority is good or authority is bad. Unchecked, unchallengeable authority is bad, and it's bad to be unquestioning of authority. But authority in and of itself, if it is accountable to law and to the people, that's not a bad thing. And I think that is the Star Trek position. Not that authority is bad, not that the chain of command is bad, but that unthinking obedience to the chain of command, unthinking obedience to the authority is what's bad. And I don't think that's a contradiction. I think that's the way it has to work in order for us to have a fair, just society. Here's one from Jen Flips from Offspring. There are times, sir, when men of good conscience cannot blindly follow orders. You acknowledge their sentience, but you ignore their personal liberties and freedom. Order a man to hand his child over to the state? Not while I am his captain. Data is totally ready to hand his kid over to Admiral Antagonist until Picard offers that pearl of wisdom. And again, this is a catch that a lot of you in the comments made. That would have been a perfect example for me to cite of a time in TNG when Picard directly violates an order of his superior. Because yes, Admiral Antagonist, as you call him in that comment, Jen, orders Data and orders Picard to cooperate and to give Lal over to Starfleet for study. And Picard, to his face, tells the Admiral, we're not doing that. Do what you want to with me. Do what you want to with Data. I don't care. We're not doing that, period. And that is a direct violation of his orders. And Picard doesn't do that very often. And as I said, during the TV show, he hardly ever does that. He does it more in the movies than he does in the TV show. But that is a great example in the TV show of him doing just that. So I definitely should have included that in my chain of command video for sure. Here's one from Nastro PC. Considering all the breaking orders that goes unpunished, my pet peeve is Worf's treatment in Change of Heart. He won't leave his wife to die to complete a now compromised mission, so is unfit to ever have his own command? Worf should defo be getting the Starfleet Officers Union on the case. I agree with you, it's an inconsistency. It doesn't bother me all that much because that is a really good episode, and I really like that they gave Worf that choice, that they made Worf Mr. Rule Follower, Mr. By the Book, which is what he had been firmly established as by that point. They gave him that choice where he could either follow orders and serve what he believed was a greater good. It's not like he didn't believe in the mission. He believed in the mission and he believed it was important. But he could either do that or he could save his wife, who he loves. And it was the choice. It's sort of the classic superhero dilemma. You know, it's the dilemma that Green Goblin gives Spider-Man at the end of the first, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, where he has Mary Jane in one hand and a bus full of strangers in another, and he drops them both, and he's like, who do you save? Do you save the woman you love, or do you save the bus full of strangers? And that's the choice that Worf is given. Do you save the one person that you love, or do you complete the mission that will hopefully result in saving many, many, many other lives? It's similar to the dilemma that Kirk faces in City on the Edge of Forever, where he can either allow Edith to die and preserve the future he knows, or save Edith and that future be damned because he loves her and he doesn't want to let her die. And Kirk makes the choice to serve the greater good and to let her die in order to allow the future to be restored. And Worf makes the opposite choice. Worf makes the selfish choice, but also the choice that is totally sympathetic and understandable. He's not going to leave his wife to die. This is the woman he loves. This is his partner. This is his soulmate. This is the person he has been waiting for his whole life. Damn you to hell. You are not going to order me to let her die. I don't care what happens to me or to anybody else. And it's a great moment for Worf, and it's a great episode. And yes, it's inconsistent that he definitely has a case. If he does take it to the Union, he definitely has a case for inconsistent enforcement of the rules, because insubordination, even serious insubordination like Worf is guilty of, we have not seen it punished that harshly, hardly at all, in the entire history of the Star Trek franchise up to that point. So I think Worf definitely has a case, but it doesn't bother me because it happens during the course of a fantastic episode and a great character moment and a great bit of character development for Worf, who is one of my favorite characters. This one is from Haramus. So I assume this was filmed without knowledge of the latest episode of Discovery. If so, wow, that is quite the coincidence. That episode tackles the whole theme in a new and very impactful way. Maybe this video deserves an addendum? Yeah, I had no idea what the story of that week's Discovery was going to be, but literally, I think the day after the Chain of Command video went online, there was the episode of Discovery where Michael is demoted from her post as first officer for insubordination, for disobeying direct orders from Captain Saru. So yeah, very relevant. And obviously I had no idea that was going to happen. I had no idea what Discovery's story was going to be that week, but it is a coincidence. And that is another instance of we can add to the short list of times when major characters in Star Trek shows, lead protagonists especially, have actually been subjected to punishment for disobeying orders. Because Michael is punished by her captain for disobeying an order in that episode, and that hardly ever happens. But it happened in the very next Star Trek episode after I made my video talking about how it hardly ever happens. So it sure shut my mouth. Not really, but Here's one from Janet Smith, TOS trope. Admirals, commodores, and commissioners are always less competent, insane, or downright evil. Only Kirk knows what is best. That is definitely a TOS trope, although it is also a trope that is found far more broadly in all kinds of popular fiction on TV, especially if you watch TV shows in the 70s and 80s and the 90s. Even if you watch like cop shows. I think I've talked about this before in videos. I can't remember specifically where, but it's a very popular trope in cop shows and the X-Files, like sort of cop-adjacent shows, that everybody is incompetent except our heroes. So on a cop show like NYPD Blue, for example, one of the tropes in NYPD Blue throughout the series is that other cops suck at their jobs, are incompetent, are corrupt, are bigoted, are not to be trusted. Other cops suck. Our cops, the cops that this show is about, they're the best. They're the best detectives. They're the most morally upstanding, well, except for Sipowicz, but even he's not that bad. They're the best. Everybody else sucks. Our heroes are the best, right? That's a very, very common trope. And it is something that we see in classic Trek for sure, where Kirk's bosses, particularly, don't know their asses from their elbows. But Kirk is almost always right. This one is from Shane O'Neill. In Into Darkness, I know it's a bad film, Kirk does get busted down from Captain for screwing with the Prime Directive. However, that lasts all of about 15 minutes, because Star Trek. Well, you don't have to apologize to me, because I actually think Into Darkness is a good movie. So, you might think it's a bad movie, even though you're citing this example from him. I think Into Darkness is a good movie, so you don't have to apologize to me for citing it. And that is a great scene. Yes, it is undone almost immediately, but that scene of Admiral Pike dressing down Kirk for violating the Prime Directive and imposing that sudden and shocking and unexpected, because we're used to Starfleet captains getting away with murder, that sanction on Kirk where he says, you're not the captain of the Enterprise anymore. You broke the Prime Directive. That's our most important rule, and you can't just do that. Especially you, who are a young captain, who were given the Enterprise at the end of the last movie because of your heroic action. We jumped you right from cadet to captain to show our appreciation and our gratitude, and also the confidence that we had in you, and you blew it by violating the Prime Directive, so you can't be a captain anymore. You can't be commander of the Enterprise anymore. It's a great scene. It's a great Kirk and Pike scene. It's a great acting scene from Bruce Greenwood and Chris Pine. It sets up a really interesting dynamic between these two characters, or expands rather on what was already an interesting dynamic between them. And it's just a great scene. And yeah, of course, it gets undone pretty soon after that for plot reasons, so that the movie can keep going forward and Kirk can get back in the captain's chair for the rest of the movie. But it's a really, really, really great scene in what I think is a very underrated Star Trek movie. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And it's a terrific example of, again, one of the few times in the franchise when a heroic character breaks the rules and is actually punished for it. Hardly ever happens, but it did happen temporarily in Star Trek Into Darkness, and in a really, really great scene. And finally, this comment from Geek of Truth 2. I've not much interest in what you have to say on anything, Steve, but staying out of politics is a good move for you. Thank you, Geek of Truth. I think eating shit is a good move for you. Thanks for watching, everybody. That's it for this comment response video. Thank you all so much for your comments, except for Geek of Truth 2, because, as I previously said, he can eat shit. Everybody else who left a comment that I talked about in this video, and pretty much everybody else who leaves comments that make it through moderation and are actually visible to the public, you leave such awesome comments. I thank you so much for watching my videos and for responding to them in such funny and insightful and helpful ways. It really, really enriches this whole experience of making YouTube videos for me and makes this so much more fun than it would be otherwise without that interaction and that sense of community that comes with having you watch and respond to the videos. It's really awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a subscriber if you're a subscriber. Thank you for being a patron if you are a patron. If you're not a patron, you can become one by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives. And if you become a patron at any level, from $1 a month on up to however much you think I'm worth, you get access to the patron-only feed on my Patreon page, which lets you vote in polls to choose upcoming Trek Actually topics, and also lets you submit questions ahead of time for my bi-weekly Ask Away live streams, where I answer questions the whole show from viewers. And patreon.com/Steve Shives. If you pledge at $5 a month or more, you get a shout out on the air during a Trek Actually video. But if the name recognition is not important to you, $1 a month and on up gets you access to most of the benefits of being a patron. So yeah, thank you all so much, whether you're a patron or not, whether you've been a patron for years, or whether you just became a patron, or whether you're not even a patron at all, you just watch and like and subscribe and comment and share the videos and do all the free stuff that helps me out. I appreciate you so much. I could not do this without you. I hope you enjoyed this video. And what was that? Hap A? I was almost done. I'm not going back. I'm not doing it over. I'm not doing it over. I'm just going to leave all this in. Have a happy holiday. I hope those of you who have recently celebrated end-of-year holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, solstice, etc., I hope that you have had good holidays. I hope you've had a good time. I hope that everybody has a happy new year coming up here in a few days. And yeah, that's it. Thanks so much. Take care, everybody. Be safe. Be careful. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you next time.